By the end of today's episode, you'll know exactly how to increase your chances of turning a background role into a speaking role in almost any production. Welcome to the Actor's Career Compass, where we help aspiring screen actors find high-quality auditions, sign with great agents, and book major roles in legit productions. I'm your host, Martin Benson, and today we'll be covering how to upgrade background roles into speaking roles. I'll cover how to upgrade a background role to a featured extra role, where you're more likely to get a credit, how to upgrade a featured extra role to a speaking role, where you'll almost certainly get a credit, along with becoming SAG eligible if you get Taft-Hartley, and some general long-term strategies to apply if you want to significantly increase your chances of any of these techniques working. Ready to dive in? First off, getting a speaking role in any production is not easy. You need really strong clips that show you can act. You need to deliver what I call level 4 performances, where people watching just can't help but be captivated and deeply feeling the emotions your character is feeling. And you also need strong marketing materials and people who can push for you, especially if it's a bigger role, someone like an agent or a manager. Now, if your clips do not have really strong acting, you're going to get far fewer auditions, and you're going to find yourself only able to book unpaid student films or background roles. So how do you go about turning background roles into speaking parts, especially on bigger productions where they're paying? Well, it's all about doing something as a background actor that gets you noticed. And yes, it is a very fine line to walk. So some people might feel like the advice in this episode is a little bit scary or different, but I don't go too far with it. So I recommend, if you really care about this, that you test it out and see how it works, because it has worked for other actors. Now, before we discuss what to actually do, what this process looks like, I want to outline a few very important factors that you should remember. Number one, anytime that you're trying to upgrade your role from background to featured background or background to speaking, you have to be as professional and prepared as possible, basically, okay? If you do anything that's unprofessional or give them any reason not to want to give you an opportunity, then no matter what you do is not going to work. Okay, so for instance, being professional and prepared means getting to set early, being friendly and positive with everyone, following instructions exactly, not going on your phone at all. The more care and attention that you devote to the shoot, the more positive you're going to be viewed and the more likely you'll get a special opportunity. Number two, being visible without being pushy, okay? So if possible, you want to try to stay near where the primary action of the scene is, where the principal actors are. This increases the chance of the director wanting you to interact with the characters. Number three, always say yes when asked for things, okay? If the AD or the director asks for volunteers to interact with the leads, raise your hand immediately and always be willing to help out. Next, number four, be friendly with all crew and cast. Assistant directors, ADs, they sometimes do actually recommend background actors for upgraded roles if they really like them and there's an opportunity. Finally, number five, just keep in touch with people that you meet over time. So even if the current shoot doesn't result in an upgrade, if you keep in touch with the people in the bigger crew positions and the actors that you meet, you may get an upgrade in the future if they like you and they've worked with you a number of times, or you may even be invited directly to audition for a speaking role. As long as you're following the general guidelines above, I'm going to share an example of how an upgrade might work. Okay, the key is to do something very subtle, but that is just risky enough to get you noticed, but not so obnoxious as to get you in outright trouble or fired. So here's an example of what that might look like. Pretend that you're a patron in a restaurant, okay? And you're sitting in the background of the scene, you're eating lunch, while the two main actors are in the foreground speaking to one another. Ideally, if you can, See if you're able to snag a slightly closer seat that's still in the frame of the camera. If you can't, whatever, it's fine, but if you can, that's obviously ideal. Now, it's time to take a small risk. So even though you weren't asked to do it by the director, let's say you decide to raise your hand in the background slightly to signal for the waiter to come over with the check. Okay? Now, when this happens, a couple things might occur. One, no one will notice, and you can just keep doing the same thing for each take in the background. Two, the director might notice your hand signal and tell you not to do it again. Okay, well, in that case, don't try anything else or you might get fired. Or number three, the director might notice and think it's an interesting way to add more realism or depth to the scene, and she might tell you to continue doing it for each take. If option number three happens, it means that you've gotten noticed by the director and she likes what you did. And that's great because now you have a small window of opportunity. So in order to hopefully get upgraded to a speaking role, you can then attempt to make the hand raise slightly more prominent a second time if the waiter, for instance, doesn't come. So for example, you might wave your hand a bit in the background to get the waiter's attention. Again, slightly later in the scene. At this point, the same thing might happen. The director might not notice, or they might tell you to stop, or if you're very lucky, they might give you a line like, "Excuse me," or simply get a closer shot of you, which could turn you into a featured extra and increase your chance of being credited. Now remember, trying to turn a background role into a speaking part is very difficult. Obviously, I recommend auditioning for speaking parts and not just trying to do background work and then upgrading it. But you're going to have a better shot at doing this successfully if you already know the people on set, including the director. Again, this can be especially effective with smaller independent films. And this is why long-term networking is very important. As I said, you're more likely to be able to do it on smaller indie film sets, but it can be done on bigger sets as well. In general, the risk is relatively low if you keep your action in the background very minimal and just hope that the director notices it and likes it. Remember that directors are people too, and there's almost always a way to get them interested in thinking about different potential ways for the scene to go, ways they might not have considered at first. As long as what you try makes sense and adds to the scene rather than taking away from it, it could work. Of course, it can backfire, okay? And some people may completely disagree with this and say, oh, you should never, ever try to influence or do something. And that's fair. You don't have to take risks. But I was asked the question by a reader, or by a listener, people who listen to this podcast and read my emails, write me all the time asking, is there a way to do this? How do I do it? So I share the ways that have worked for actors and can potentially work. Nothing is guaranteed. These things can backfire, but as the saying goes, no risk, no reward. And especially if you're taking a very small risk, like just raising your hand a little bit in the background and not speaking or something, the backfiring is going to be small. Speaking of which, a couple of things to keep in mind. Number one, the more relationships that you've built with the higher-ups, the higher your likelihood of success, as we talked about. Speaking with people and being friendly and outgoing on set will improve your chances of getting bumped to a featured extra because people will like you and want to give you a shot. Try striking up a conversation with higher-ups when they're not busy. You can find something you either like about or have in common with them and comment on it. That should break the ice and allow you to move into an actual conversation. Number two, only try this if the director seems like a laid-back person, okay? If the director is very, very strict or uptight or in a rush, you're probably not likely to be upgraded, so it might not be worth the risk. Notice how the director is interacting with people on set, and if he or she seems relaxed and easy to work with, then, you could try it. Number three, only do this once per production, okay? If they don't go for it, just apologize and don't do anything like it again. If you attempt it at least once per set that you work on as a background actor, eventually one time it might work, and that could be all you need. Finally, number four. All right, if you want to take the ultimate risk and say a line without permission, like while you're waving your hand to get the waiter's attention, you say, "Excuse me," Never do that. Never risk that while the camera's rolling, okay? That is a big risk. If you're going to attempt it, if you've got the confidence, we'll just say, to attempt something like that, only do it while the actors are rehearsing, hoping that the director likes it and wants to add it to the scene. But again, be sure that the director seems like a really laid-back person and is joking around and in a good mood. Because if you ever say a line or you speak either while they're actually rolling or with a director who's very strict, you're probably going to get fired immediately. Okay? But if you have good rapport and you like the director, you know them and stuff, and you just like, excuse me, you just do that to mess around, and it's not while they're shooting, they're just rehearsing, they might like it, and it could be something to try, but it is kind of scary. So it can be scary to step out of the box and take a small risk like all of what we've been discussing. But again, no risk, no reward. It's the actors who think and act differently, the ones who don't let their inner fears deter them, who most often get opportunities. All right, thanks for listening. Now, if you want to dive even deeper on how to upgrade roles, I highly recommend checking out my podcast called How to Upgrade a Downgraded Role, which is episode number 115. It outlines what to do if a casting director wants to offer you a smaller role than you originally hoped for. Okay, again, it's episode number 115. It's called How to Upgrade a Downgraded Role on the Actor's Career Compass. Lastly, if you'd like to work with me personally, I'd love to hop on a quick, absolutely free Zoom call with you. We'll look at where you are, what you're struggling with, and figure out what some of the next best steps are for you to take. We'll discuss whether my one-to-one coaching programs will be a good fit for you. And if you're ready to do something like that, just visit martinbenson.com and you can set it up there. I'd really love to meet with you. Thanks so much, and I'll see you soon.